Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Dropping Bars. And today, the show is a little bit different. Today is what I call the knowledge corner, where we will be delving deep into a particular topic. And I have my guest with me, Mr. Perry Douglas, who will be helping me go deep into one of the most important topic of the day, and that is digital transformation. Now, digital transformation is one of those buzzwords that emerged fully, even though it was there before, but fully with the proliferation of COVID-19, and everybody started talking about digital transformation. And we need to be implementing digital technologies in our business and in our government institutions and agencies. However, despite the fact that there is so much talk about digital transformation, it is also one of the most misunderstood, in my book, words or concepts out there. And that's why my guest today, Mr. Perry Douglas, will help me deconstruct digital transformation, especially digital transformation in the Caribbean. We're going to be looking at exactly what digital transformation is and what is required for there to be true digital transformation of a business, non-profit, government institution, agencies, or any organization that wants to upgrade or change its mode of operation by introducing digital technologies into its overall operation. So, Mr. Perry Douglas, welcome to Dropping Bars.
Well, thank you very much for the invite and having me on your show. And I just, I know you're a knowledgeable guy, so I hope I can hold my own and contribute. You're the expert.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've been looking at your work, and I'm very, very, very impressed with it. So I know you're the right guy to have this discussion with.
Yeah.
So as we jump in, why don't you tell the audience who is Perry Douglas and what you do?
Yeah. So Perry Douglas is a guy born in Grenada, in Mount Rose, St. Patrick's. My parents brought me here when I was 6 years old, so I grew up in Canada and grew up in Montreal. But like good West Indian parents, I would always be brought back home quite frequently because the first 6 years of my life I grew up with my grandmother, and you know how that is, right? Your mom leaves you, and then I grew up with my grandmother, so. That's the experience. But I grew up in Montreal. Went to University at McGill in Montreal, and from there I moved to Toronto, and I got into the investment business. I worked for firms like RBC, Dominion Securities. I worked for AIC. With billionaire investor Michael E. Chin, who's the chairman of NCB Jamaica. And after that, I worked for UBS, which is I think it still is the number one, private bank in the world. And there I honed my skills in investment, everything from, currency, portfolio management, structured products, private equity, and not to try to plug myself, but I will. But in 2008, I was voted the number one guy at UBS Canada on the All Factor rankings, which considers return for clients, client service, all those type of things.
Fantastic.
And after that, I went out on my own, and I dabbled in a few different investments. And the company that I have now is called Douglas Blackwell. And Douglas Blackwell essentially is a firm that helps people make decisions. And we look in areas of, data science as a managed service, or we look, most of the stuff that we do is, business development, but we do it from an industrial engineering perspective, where we, traditionally people have an idea and then they would, go out, look to build the idea, raise money, that type of thing. We first look at the macro environment. We look at by using data science, we look at the trends, the opportunities. And once we identify and we verify those trends and those market opportunities exist, we try to build an enterprise and construct an enterprise to take advantage of the long-term market trend that we see. And that's about it. I got three kids. Alexandra actually finished up at Ryerson. I got my son Nathan and Asia. Both went to McGill. Asia's still in McGill. She's a first year university, and my wife Petal. And that's about it. I love to write. I love I played sports all my life. I was an athlete for Team Canada
Nice.
in basketball. So that's about it, I guess. Nothing exciting.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, I'm quite impressed. That's your background and your skill set. It's broad, it's vast, and congratulations on all your achievements to date.
Thank you.
And I'm pretty sure that you're just getting started. Especially
Hope so.
with your own firm, Douglas Blackwell.
Yes.
And one of the things I saw is. And that really caught my eye with what you do is strategy through applied intelligence.
Yes.
Right. And I will want to touch on that, but I'm not going to touch on it now. I'm
Sure.
going to touch on it a little bit later.
Yep.
But I just bring that up because this is something that's as somebody who was into strategy myself.
Yes.
That was quite that stood out to me.
Yes.
Now, there is, and in my book, there is a misconception about digital transformation and what digital transformation is. In many instances, there is the belief that digital transformation is about technology. And from my understanding of being in the digital space, digital transformation is more than just technology, because technology is the tool that is used to leverage the transformation that needs to happen within an entity or an organization. As a matter of fact, let me read something here. There's an article from the Harvard Business Review that states that if people lack the right mindset to change and current organizational practices are flawed, digital transformation will only magnify those flaws. Right? So that tells me that the transformation doesn't start with technology; it starts somewhere else.
Yes.
So I wanted to start our conversation there. Where does digital transformation start for you, or what really is digital transformation about, if it's not strictly about technology?
Well, I think you've done a fantastic job of explaining and framing, what digital transformation should be about. So, you made some very good points there. Technology is only a tool, right? It's only a tool in order to get tasks done and to get, different jobs done, or to help you make decisions. So when you talk about digital transformation, where it actually starts is in the mind, right? So digital transformation is understanding time and place in the universe, where we are. So right now we are in, so let's say, for example, we go back a couple of decades when the internet came out. Okay. That was a transformation in regards to, the internet and access to information. The world didn't change. It's just that we became more efficient and had more information in terms of getting decisions. So when you think about digital transformation, it's an understanding that we now live in a digital world. We live in a world of intelligence, artificial intelligence. So because of that digital universe that we exist in, digital transformation means now we gotta transform our minds in terms of how we do things, how we deal with customers, potentially how government, should transform themselves in order to service individuals or, service their population a little bit better. So digital transformation, more than anything else, starts in the mind. Because at the end of the day, if you look at a business, I think in that same Harvard article, you would see, I think it was like billions or even trillions of dollars a year is spent on digital transformation. And I think about 70% of people of companies, organizations who try to digitally transform fail, because what they do is they put the cart before the horse, and they take digital transformation as technology intensive and a technology focus. No, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get to a customer? Are you trying to sell? So you're still trying to sell something out there, but you're using digital technology as a tool, okay, to do it faster and better and get feedback or whatnot. So the world hasn't changed in regards to how humans, do things. It's just a matter, or from a business perspective, you still have to offer a service. Digital transformation is the transformational tool in regards to how you get things done, and you have to stay focused on it. It's just the technology. People may go out and say, okay, we're going to do digital transformation. It's a buzzword, digital transformation. Okay, well, wait, people do that, try to do that every day and continue to fail. So I think you got it right. It's a tool, and transformation starts in the mind and in terms of how you do things.
Yeah, that's really, I think, the highlight of digital transformation. It is that strategic mindset that one needs to have if they are to transform the way that they do business, or depending on what kind of organization that they operate in.
Yes.
Because what you're going to find happening is, if someone doesn't believe in the technology, or they don't believe in the tools that are there, and let's say you want to focus on the old way of doing things, but you decide, you know what, okay, let's try using this technology or that technology, but deep down you don't really believe in the fully leveraging those tools to the full advantage, then your digital transformation will fail, because that there needs to be a full transformation of the mind to understand that, hey, our if we are to shift our business model, then we need to fully embrace that. We need to understand that we need to fully embrace the technologies and so that exist. So you're on the point. Thanks for sharing that. And I mean, you can't really stop really highlighting the importance of understanding that digital transformation really starts with a strategic mindset. Now, we saw that with COVID-19, and when COVID-19 hit, or when it became really bad. As a matter of fact, when swine flu was out, it was ravaging Mexico, and so I was in Mexico at the time. Right, I was in Mexico at the time, in the middle of swine flu. I was in Mexico City, and it was a couple of weeks, and after a while, we went right back. I was in university at the time. I was doing my undergrad in economics, and we went right back to school after like 2 or 3 weeks or thereabout. And when COVID hit, I was in Grenada, and I thought that it would be the same thing. I'm like, I went to swine flu. It was a few weeks. That's gonna go, and so I had the mindset that COVID is not gonna last for long. Because of my experience with swine flu. Lo and behold, I was wrong, because COVID lasted, and we're still experiencing COVID today, and we're still seeing the effect of COVID today. But one of the things that COVID has done is it has brought to the forefront for many organizations, governments, and non-profits, businesses, that the need for there to be an increased use of digital innovations and digital media technologies in their business, if they are to efficiently move with the current trends that we're seeing now. And in the Caribbean in particular, and I know in Grenada, from my experience, what we saw is many of the people were not prepared. For it almost as if you had to condense like 10 years of learning in the digital space into like a few days or like a month. We had students who had to now start doing online classes. Many households did not have access to, whether it's laptops and tablets and whatever. Many people did not even know how to access some of those basic or use some of those basic tools that we had.
Yeah.
And there were still some people who pretty much were shying away from the technologies. We still see people lining up in long lines outside of, let's say, a utility company to pay their utility bills.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like in the Caribbean,
Mm-hmm.
we are still a little bit behind, even though we are talking a lot about digital transformation.
Mm-hmm.
We're still a little bit behind
Mm-hmm.
where that is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in your view,
Mm-hmm.
if we are to truly invest in digital transformation in the Caribbean, if Caribbean economies are to truly benefit
Mm-hmm.
from digital transformation,
Mm-hmm.
where should we start? Where should like Caribbean governments start if they are to shift
Mm-hmm.
to the digital to truly embrace digital transformation? I know it has to start with the mindset.
Yeah.
We said that before,
Mm-hmm.
but okay, now at the top, let's say the leaders and our government leaders, and so it starts with them understanding that they need to shift their mindset from a digital standpoint. But
Yes.
then, what are some of the steps that going from there that in your book needs to happen?
Yeah. So there's a two-step approach, or side by side. Fundamentally, what makes economies go is innovation and entrepreneurship. Government in itself can't lead an economy in relations to growth. What government can do is they can set policy, okay, that enables entrepreneurship and investment into digital technologies. So for me, the role of government, okay, is to understand the universe and understand, how business works, and understand that most businesses today have to have some form of technology application in the enterprise. If you don't have some form of technology in enterprise, you're simply not going to be able to compete. You may be able to get away with it in Grenada for a period of time, but the world is moving rapidly in another direction. So ultimately, if you're not moving in that direction with them, you're actually moving. You're falling behind. You're falling behind by a factor of not moving. So really, what we have to get our mindset around is that entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology, okay, is what moves an economy forward. So one of the things we have to do is we have to go back in history. If we look at historical times in the past where transformation, now it's just digital transformation. But if you go back to the agricultural revolutions, what happened in terms of domesticating, foods and animals, so we can eat and we can have healthy societies and we can expand population growth. Agricultural tools came into use in regards to farming, right? So those tools helped society move forward. The Industrial Revolution, for example, did the same thing. It created more urban centers. It created more population growth. It created opportunity for people to move from a rural farming type of existence to a more urban existence. And the technology at the time, steam engine, electricity, the assembly line, whatever it is, those were all transformational events in economies that move societies forward. Right now, we talk about digital transformation. Digital transformation is another event in history, okay, where technology and efficiency gains move a society forward. In this situation, though, it's a mind-blowing speed, right? And we can do much, much more. But at the end of the day, government in itself, okay, can't lead an economy. What has to happen is government can set the mindset that we need entrepreneurship in Grenada. We need foreign investment in Grenada, because without capital, you can talk about whatever digital transformation as much as you want, but without capital, which is fuel, nothing can happen. So what government can do, okay, is look at the society and say, hey, we need entrepreneurship in agriculture, which is the number one area in the Caribbean. Tourism in itself does not create wealth for a nation. particularly for the Caribbean. It does not create a middle class. You're an economist guy. In order for economies to grow and sustain, we have to create a middle class, right? And in tourism, we can't create a middle class. However, what's our natural competitive advantage? Our natural competitive advantage is two things. We have land, and you know what they say in Grenada, you can drop a seed and anything grows, right? So what happens is we have the land, we have the soil, and we also have the sun. So the optimal for renewable energy. So the optimal thing is to look to grow from a technology perspective, is to look to grow an agricultural economy using technology applications to essentially, create a food security and an export-driven economy, and use renewable resources in order to fuel that, so we can do it at a lower cost base. That's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on those things. Now, government's role, okay, is to facilitate, and write policy that will facilitate that growth. Now, obviously, in government, they can go on a transformation of their own government in terms of, like you said, it was a great example. You have to line up to pay utility bill and all those, type of things. Government needs to make sure we can do all those things online. If you look at Estonia, for example, in Europe, Estonia, pretty much everything is online. If you book an appointment with your doctor and the doctor, has a medication, automatically it just goes to the drugstore. They don't have to call or whatnot. Everything is so automated. If you have one particular number, and whether it's to pay your bills, whatever it is, you can do that online. You can do it on your phone. When you do that, when you don't have to line up at the bank, we don't have to line up at the utility office, what that creates, it creates productivity. People can go back to work. And if people are now productive, they can go back to work. They're not wasting time spending in line. The economy becomes more productive. And if the economy more productive, it has greater output with greater efficiency and creates greater profit. So really, it's the application of technology which is key. And the policy that helps facilitate the application of technology is how we're transforming. Because the transformation itself is not magic. We all have access to the same technology. It's how we apply that technology to our benefit, right? Which makes us go. So government's role is to facilitate entrepreneurship and investment in technology and innovation, right? And create policies that enable enable technology company growth. And I'm trying purposely not to use the word digital transformation, because it's not about digital transformation. It's about innovation and technology and entrepreneurship, right? That's what it's about. The technology is, okay, once you decide you have a business, once you decide you can build a business, now all you're doing is taking the technology and applying the technology to make it run. That's it. So you can't think digital transformation first. You have to think, what business am I going to build? What services am I going to do? How am I going to become profitable? How am I going to build a good export-based economy? And then what technologies am I going to put and apply to that in order to achieve economic growth over the long term and create that wealth of a nation? And that's where we all have to drive to.
And that was wow. I love that what you just said. And you even give me a lot to think about from my end. One of the things that you mentioned and that really stood out to me, my most recent stint in Grenada was working in the tourism industry.
Yes.
And one of the things that you mentioned that really stood out to me, which is kind of like a side note, for example, was the idea that we can't focus on tourism in order to build the wealth that we need. And like you say, if you want to grow as an economy, build the economy, you need to have a strong middle class, and tourism can create that. And we need to invest in agricultural technologies. I mean, we have the lands, like you say. So that is something that stood out to me. Because I mean, one of my experience just in tourism, and I always had the thought that, okay, tourism and agriculture needs to work hand in hand, because when the tourists come in, they use agriculture to feed them, and so on and so forth. But then you just created a mindset shift for
Yes.
me in the process of,
Yes.
of with what you just said.
Yeah.
And everything you mentioned in terms of focusing on innovation.
Mhm.
And we thought, like I said, not starting with digital transformation,
Yes.
but looking at what's your business idea,
Yes.
what's your export strategy,
Yes.
how you gonna get customers,
Yes.
what innovative approach you're gonna take with this,
Yes.
and then say, okay, how can I leverage the
Correct.
technology?
Exactly.
After you understand that, saying how can I leverage the technology in order to make all this happen, and that's where it needs to start. So you don't start with digital transformation, and I'm really glad you said that, because it appears as though within the Caribbean context
Mhm.
that we put in digital transformation first,
Yeah.
and then after we say, okay, well, we want to invest in digital transformation or whatever. Okay, so what can you do thereafter? Like, what business can you have, or whatever the case is, to fit within this
Yeah.
this idea of what digital transformation should be. So I'm really
Yes.
glad that you
Yeah.
broke that down
Yeah.
and kind of expounded on that a little bit. So
Yeah.
so thank you very much for doing that, and I hope that our governments in the Caribbean should definitely pay attention to to that piece of what you just said. That's really important.
Well, let me break it down a little bit more, because it's a vital thing, what you just said here. The mistake that's happening in the Caribbean right now is the same thing. They don't think. They just copy. Oh, they hear digital transformation, and all of a sudden you're paying consultants to do digital transformation. It's a huge mistake, and they're going to fail. Because what you have to do is how the thing about applied intelligence. Applied intelligence means how you apply intelligence, how you apply technology, how you apply thinking to execute and get what you want. So as you know, you're a strategy guy. Strategy always comes first. Okay, so
Yeah.
what is your strategy? If you have no strategy, it doesn't matter. Technology is just something that you're going to use. So for example, tourism, okay, let's go through it. Tourism, there is no economy in the world that's created a middle-class economy based on tourism. In the Caribbean specifically, after independence, tourism was only seen as something that they said, okay, now, it'll be something that will help the economies grow. No, it wasn't. It was essentially, for Europeans and everybody to come back and have somewhere to go, and that was their tourism thing. But tourism, okay, does not create wealth, because if you look at it, you're not producing anything. Okay, it's a service industry. It's low wages. And a lot of the people who own the hotels or whatnot are not even from the Caribbean. So what happens, that capital leaves the region, right? And the sales and the marketing and the bookings take place outside the region. So there's no wealth created for the people in the Caribbean. Now, if you go to agriculture, historically, agriculture is what leads every society. The ability of a society to feed itself first is the first sign of a productive, healthy society. If you can't feed yourself. Now, if you break it down this way, agriculture creates wealth. It did for the colonizers. I mean, they built plantations. They created wealth. What do you think paid for all those castles? What do you think paid for Buckingham Palace and all those castles the Queen is staying? It's the Caribbean, Africa. Okay, it's all the colonized. It's called the colonized world. Barbados, at the end of the 17th century, was the richest colony in the world, with all the plantations. So land and agriculture has always been a creator of wealth. We fool ourselves by not thinking and listening to what other people tell us. But don't forget, those other people are competing with us. So why would you be listening to your competitor? So the creation of wealth lies in agriculture. Now, in the digital world, okay, what has to happen now is you have to understand how to create an export growth economy. So, for example, Grenada is the island of spice. We have all these spices. The spice business is something I did. I wrote some stuff on that. I think the spice business is about a $15 to $20 billion a year business, just spices alone. We're the island of spice, but we have no exportation of that spice. We have no marketing of that spice. What we should be doing is should be using data science technologies. We should be using artificial technology to find the demand areas around the world. And once we find the demand areas around the world, okay, come back and understand how we can process these to higher value added products. So for example, if you now, instead of, traditional farming is inefficient. Okay. We now have to move to greenhouse farming. Okay. And the greenhouse farming, we could still use the sunlight, right? And we have an advantage over greenhouse farming in Canada and places around the world is huge right now. But the difference is our cost base will be lower because we don't got to pay for heat in the winter and a whole bunch of different things. So if we could now take our natural resources, apply technology to it, be able to first feed ourselves, and then the surplus of that we export. That's how we create wealth and how we create hard dollars for the economy. And those entrepreneurs in the ag tech economy, now they become the wealthy, instead of the wealthy plantation owners, now you have the wealthy homegrown in Grenada, right? Agricultural entrepreneurs. These people create wealth, okay? They create a middle class, they help create a middle class economy. They give jobs to everybody. People can now, get a mortgage, buy a home, pay for a car, send their kids to school. And that's how we progress. But we can't progress in an economy, okay, that does not create wealth, which tourism does not create wealth. It has not create wealth. Okay, all it creates is just, big white elephant projects, and the people in the Caribbean don't get anything. You give these guys who come from outside, you give them sweet deals. They don't pay any tax, right? People stay in the resort, right? The local guy out there, restaurants are not getting it because it's all inclusive. So tourism is not a wealth creating, not a wealth creating economy for Caribbean nations. Ag tech is where you want to start because you have a natural competitive advantage. So we have to understand and think. And you don't want to start with digital transformation. You want to start with a solid strategy, understand it, and then you apply intelligence and you apply technology and you apply digital to make it go. And that's how you have to think.
And so what you just did there was pretty much look at the relationship between the strategy and the digital transformation,
yes.
which is one of the things that I wanted to touch on. So I'm glad you touched on it.
Yeah.
Now, just to add one thing to it, or to ask you to add one thing to it, in terms of data.
Yes.
Where does data fit in the equation when we're looking at strategy and digital transformation? We understand that we need to first start with strategy.
Yes.
And then we move on, and then that strategy will dictate where we go.
Yes.
And now, where does data fall in that equation?
Data is the most powerful thing in the universe. Information and knowledge is the most powerful thing. That's how you create wealth. As they say, data is the new oil. So it's very simple, right? You can sit there and say, I have intuition or I have an idea. So let's say a guy wants to is growing hot peppers in Grenada, right? And that man says, I'm going to grow hot peppers and I'm going to sell it. Okay, where are you going to sell to? Where's your demand? Do you know where your demand is coming from? Now, if we do it sort of in reverse, you can grow peppers, you can grow anything in Grenada. Well, let's use data science to find out where in the world there's high demand for these particular products. For pepper, let's use pepper, hot peppers. Where in the world is there high demand for these particular products? What area in the world, buys more of this, or what area in the world may process it? What stores may buy it? Where is it, a niche market? Once you have the data, okay, now you've verified that there is a market. So now if you verify there is a market, that now you move off of the demand side and you go to the supply side and say, okay, there's a market which I verified by data. Okay, it exists. I'm not guessing. I'm not doing anything. That exists. Now you move to the supply side and see how best you can from the product, you can fill that demand. But if you don't have data to verify demand, you're shooting in the dark. And you're putting in risk into your business, or you're putting in risk. So data is important because data helps you. Let's leave intuition at the door. Okay. Data helps you make good decisions. So it's just better to make decisions based on fact. as opposed to intuition. And what data science can help you do, and artificial intelligence can help you do, is verification of information, tell you the data so you can come back and put a strategy in order to execute on that. But if you don't know, you're at a disadvantage. Knowledge is king. So the reason why, okay, if you look at transformational things in the past, the reason why, for example, let's take the Industrial Revolution. The reason why the British, okay, never wanted the industrialization of the colonies, because once you have knowledge, you'll be able to create commerce and wealth and get into manufacturing. If you're just left selling products or the raw materials, right? If you're just left in that, you have no opportunity to add value. And when you add value, you decommoditize your product and you add value, and adding value creates wealth. But in order to add value, it takes knowledge. And in order to acquire knowledge, it takes information. And when you get that information in, you have to get the data. And applied intelligence really is a disciplined process of analyzing data to help make good decisions. At the end of the day, that's what our applied intelligence methodology is about.
Right, and I was actually about to go there because. So I'm glad you touched on that, because one of the things that you mentioned, like I just stated, was, we start with strategy. We get to the digital transformation. You just mentioned the importance of data, because without the data, it's like I said, the new oil. It's that thing that will tell you, okay, you want to plant peppers, but where can you show me that there's a market for the peppers that will justify you wanting to do that? So that's where the data comes in.
Yeah,
and the starting point is the strategy, and your approach in Douglas Blackwell is strategy through applied intelligence.
Yes,
which means that even before we get to anywhere, and we're talking strategy, that then there is an approach.
Correct.
To the strategy, which is through the applied intelligence.
Yes.
You pretty much touched on some of it as you were speaking, but if you were to just delve a little bit deeper into using the applied intelligence part to drive the strategy, what does that look like?
So applied intelligence is something that is a proprietary application to Douglas Blackwell. So applied intelligence is a discipline and it's a framework. What it is, it's math. The universe is math, okay? And the more you take a mathematical, quantitative approach to things, you remove the emotion, okay? Because the more you could remove emotions to decision-making, the more optimal your decisions will be. Because emotion doesn't mean anything. It's something you create. It's something you feel. It's not factual. It's an emotion. We know if I look out my window, there's a tree there. That's a fact. There's another tree, so there's 3 trees there. That's a fact. If I look out the window and say, well, I feel that there's a tree there. Well, no, that doesn't exist in reality. So what applied intelligence is, we just deal with reality. We just deal with what it is. As Aristotle says, the universe can't be anything other than what it is, right? It is what it is. So we look at what something is, and applied intelligence is a math model where we essentially, take some inputs in regards, what's the vision, okay, what's the idea, what, a whole bunch of different inputs. And then on the top line, we have, data science, and the common denominator is technology utilization. So if you think about it as math, when we're making decisions, we're pumping in our inputs, right, into the equation, and the equation based on the inputs, and and then you do the math on it, will give you, an objective, an objective output to take a look at to help you make the decision. It's not a magic bullet, but applied intelligence is using information, okay, intelligently, okay, and using technology. And we can use data science in there. We can use artificial intelligence in there. We can use all those things, put it into the machine, so to speak, okay, and let the intelligence pump it out. So once you do that equation, now you can take that that output and apply it to your situation. It's like math. We're not doing theory. We're doing application. So how do I use applied intelligence to help me in a business decision, to help me in a social? How do I use that applied intelligence to help the government make decisions in regards to, what it's going to do in terms of digital transformation? How are we going to take that applied intelligence and apply it to my, selling peppers? So the whole thing is, how do you apply intelligence to your decision making? And that's really, because everything is a decision. And then you take that applied intelligence and you turn it into a strategy. And your strategy now is not based on how you feel. It's based on real information, real analysis, and what's going to happen is not a guarantee, but it will be more optimal than saying, okay, I feel like this, I have this intuition. So applied intelligence is exactly that. It's the application, of thinking on something in order to create a strategy to move you forward. And that's how we have to think. If we don't have a strategy, then it doesn't matter. So I'll give you an example. If I come up with a strategy and I understand we need to market, these peppers around the world. So what application are you going to go to? Well, you're going to call Kimron and say, well, if I have to market around the world, I need a social media strategy, right? I need a social, but now you have so much information on where things are, where the demand is, all these things. So now you can take your social media strategy, make it more intelligent, apply it to what the customer is looking for, and you're going to have better outputs. Because you can't do it to me. What you do is so important, because you can't do anything today in this world from a sales and marketing perspective unless you have a social media strategy. So for example, let's say even in the tourism area, you said you were in there. Why is the government not coming to you and saying, okay, here's what we want to do. Here's what we want to promote. We need to build a social media strategy around that, because social media strategy is just letting people understand, letting people know, and it helps you in sales and marketing. So I'm not here to give you knowledge about, social media. That's you. But my only point is, someone like you should be extraordinarily valuable. I mean, somebody sent me the Grenada's budget yesterday. I looked through it. Lots of ideas, but where's the social media strategy? How are you going to get your message across? How are you going to tell the world that you're open for business? Like all these things that you have in the budget, like you got to get the message out, and you need a social media strategy, which is I think is of such importance in the world today.
Yeah, and I think that from the social media standpoint, from the government budget, and so in terms of pushing the destination, and so that will actually be filtered down through the Grenada Tourism Authority. So you may not see it like in a broad budget document. Okay. But yeah, so that's why you wouldn't see anything talking necessarily about that there, because it's filtered down through the Grenada Tourism Authority, which is actually where I worked. But something that you mentioned, and I want to kind of touch on it. And I know it's when I look at some of your writings from before, I know this is very important to you. And in terms of you spoke about using the applied intelligence to understand, okay, how do you solve the problem and to create the right strategy. Yes. But I know something that is important to you is not just solving the problem, but solving the right problem.
Yes.
Because what you might find happening is I might come to you and say, hey, I have this problem that I want to solve, but then the data, or when you start using your applied intelligence, you realize that that's not really the problem that needs to be solved.
Correct.
Right. So what's the importance of actually solving the right problem?
Excellent. You know what? That's a brilliant question. And if you can get how you just asked this question, if you can get our leaders to even understand what you're saying, right? Because what happens is that people have a reactionary thing. So they react on emotions and they go, oh my God, that's the problem. And they go. What applied intelligence is that slow down. Let's look at the data. Let's look at the information. and then realize, well, that's not even the right problem to be solved. Or you may have to solve a sub problem before you get to the other problem. So this is why I say everything is math. So it's like in calculus, right? How do we get from here to there? It's a series of solving for a series of problems before you get to the end. You can't just solve from A to Z. You have the differentials in the middle in order to solve those. So if you look at it from a mathematical perspective, okay, we have to first find what applied intelligence does. One of the things we do say 100%, we look for the right problem to solve, and we back that up by data science. So we don't come. So Kimron comes to me, Perry, man, we got to solve this problem. I'm not arrogantly saying, nah, man, that's not the right problem to solve. How am I supposed to know? Let's go into the data. Let's go into the information. Let's apply some intelligence and see what it says, and then we can have a better understanding. No, that's not the right problem to solve. And more importantly, how do we solve the problem, right? So I'm going to give you, an example. So after George Floyd, everybody came up and they wanted to create, nonprofit agencies to help businesses and whatnot. Based on my analysis, it has been the absolute wrong thing to do. A lot of even people here in Toronto has come up with nonprofit organizations. But if you look at the data, there's never been a situation where a nonprofit can help a profit organization. Those two are, and how would you have people in the nonprofit area helping entrepreneurs? It makes no sense. But what it was an emotional reaction. Okay, social justice, social equity. Racial equity. Well, guess what? You can't create equity, okay, through social and politics. You have to create equity from economics. And people don't understand how power flows. You're an economic major. Power flows from economic. You create value. When you create value, you'll have political power. When you have political power, when you have economic power, you'll have influence. That influence goes into political power, and you get things done. You can't. Wealth rules the world, right? Wealth rules the world. So you have to understand what is the right problem to solve. All applied intelligence does, it's a practical application to help you through data analysis make decide that, hey, I'm doing the right thing. You may be coming in doing the right thing, but won't you like to verify through factual information as opposed to just guessing and spending a whole bunch of money and wasting everybody's time? So you're absolutely right. We have the risk right now in the Caribbean is that we're in 2022. This is the decade of transformation. Countries are moving way ahead. We are still trying to identify what digital transformation is, and now we're taking it as this theoretical, we got to do digital transformation. Okay, well, you have to have entrepreneurship. You have to have capital. So where are the entrepreneurs? Where's the capital? Where are you going to get the capital to invest? Because all these things cost money. So if you don't have the entrepreneur lined up with the good ideas, and if you don't have access to capital, you can talk about digital transformation until the cows come home. It's going to fail. And that's why in that Harvard thing, it tells you in that Harvard study, it tells you why digital transformation fails. It fails a lot in the real world. So look at Grenada right now. Who's leading the digital transformation? Is there anybody with expertise in that? But there's no digital transformation expert. What they're missing is you need entrepreneurs, you need innovation, and you need capital. And let the entrepreneurs figure out what market demands are, okay, and create businesses that can make money. Because at the end of the day, you can't create something that has no demand. And what governments do all the time is it's top down. So if you look at it, top down development. If you go back to after World War II when the concept of the development discourse came in, top-down development has never worked. It has never worked in history. Okay, you can go through the data. I've already done it, so take my word on it. You can go through the data. What works is bottom up. Okay, bottom up is organic, it's natural, okay, and it creates a natural growth in the economy, right? And it's sustainable. Top down is done by UN advisors, and it doesn't work. So why do we keep doing things over and over and over again that doesn't work? Because people don't take time to read, and they don't take time to apply intelligence, and they don't take time to do the research, and they don't take time to research the data. So they're making decisions in ignorance at the end of the day. And that's the big risk for the Caribbean right now. Right now, we're not looking at the right problems to solve. And I think your question about the right problems to solve is absolutely the number one question to ask, because if we don't, we'll be down the road trying to solve another problem, or engaged in a digital transformation, and we forget about entrepreneurship and innovation, right? And that's a big risk to the Caribbean. So that's a really good question that you should continue to push.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to wrap up this discussion, I just going to touch on one more thing, and then and that's it. And I want to look at the concept of the outsourced mind.
Yes.
And how we can leverage that for growth in the Caribbean. I know that you said before that wealth is created through agriculture, pretty much. When you look at the colonizers, Europe was built on the back of agriculture. That was happening in the Caribbean. We have since moved away from that a little bit, but pretty much. So you highlighted that. But now, in terms of the outsourced mind, the concept of the outsourced mind, and using that for stimulating growth in the Caribbean, can you tell us, first of all, what is the outsourced mind, and how can that be used in the Caribbean for growth?
So the concept of the outsourced mind comes from a brilliant Black, scientist, Dr. Rennie Gosselin or whatnot. She has two last names, of course. So she's a 40 brilliant Black woman at MIT, right? At MIT. And she explains how governments, particularly developing governments in the Caribbean, like Grenada, don't have the ministers with their portfolios, and they don't have the tech savvy people in order to help growth along. So if you put a minister in charge of, economic development or technology, that minister is an elected person. He has no idea really, or no background. He's a politician. He's not an entrepreneur, right? So what she talks about, really, to make it as simple, right? She talks about looking for people like yourself, right, Kimron, who specialize in those things, and outsourcing those minds to help build the economy. So you're an expert in digital. You're an expert in social media, digital strategy. Okay, let's say I'm an expert in artificial intelligence and data science or whatnot. Okay, outsource those minds in order to help lead and create a bold strategy for the Caribbean, as opposed to giving it to government officials who really don't, they're just politicians and they're here today, gone tomorrow. So you need to create a class, a non-political class, okay, that will be able, through they have the expertise, so they will be able to work with the economy, help develop policy, and bring in those outsourced minds. So if you can bring the best, for Grenada, trust me, there's, I got my best buddy is at the top. He's a vice chairman of a major Canadian bank. So on the finance side, you bring a guy like that in. There's some really smart guys in the engineering field. There's some really smart guys in data science and in technology. There's yourself in social media. So what governments need to do is outsource those minds who those guys work, and men and women who work in the real world, who work in the real world. They're entrepreneurs and everything. Bring them in. Politicians can't do it, and the data says that. So Dr. Gosselin at MIT, she basically has written really extensively about the outsourced mind, and that is the only way to grow. And what has happened, that, Singapore has done that, right? Botswana, if you go through the history of Botswana, for a period of time, Botswana had one of the fastest growing economies in the world for about 10 years. And that's all the whole, that's what Black Panther is made of, Botswana. So if you go and do a little bit, what he did there after independence is that he just didn't flood the civil service with locals because he knew they didn't have the knowledge at that time. So he still kept, those civil servants because they had the knowledge, and he let them teach and transfer, and until they were able to run their whole civil service, right? And that's why it progressed really well. I mean, that's an example of whether it's good or bad. But the whole thing about the outsourced mind is going as a government and outsourcing, subcontracting the talent, okay, that you need to grow your economy, because the people that's there now, the government ministers can't do that. They're politicians, and they're not conducive to doing that because they're politicians. They're not going to do things based on what's right. First of all, they don't have the technical skills and the knowledge. That's one thing. But secondly, if they did, their objective is to be reelected. The outsourced mind is coming in to do a job, right? And for profit. Okay, they're not coming to a job to for free or whatnot. You got to figure out how to pay them, because the world works on profit and money. You can't. People have to make living. So you have to step into the real world, and really, that's what the outsource mind is. And I would hope Grenada would look at that, because we're standing still. I mean, I see a lot of words and I see this budget, but when I ask the question, okay, right? How are you going to do it? Where's the capital going to come from? Where's the entrepreneurship is going to come from? Where's, the capital is the biggest thing, right?
Right.
The capital is the biggest thing. Where's that capital? How are you going to raise capital outside to bring it in? And how are you going to make investors confident to put money in Grenada into Grenadian entrepreneurs? How are you going to do that? So you can talk about digital transformation all you want, but at the end of the day, an investor is not going to invest in something unless they're going to make money. So we talk about digital transformation, right? But when the investor says, okay, how is the economy going to grow? Economies grow through investment in local investment. Okay, well, you're going to have to show the world, where is the local investment money coming from, right? You can talk about digital transformation. Okay, well, stop with the digital transformation. Where's the idea? Where's the business? Once you have the business, okay, now you can apply, digital transformation. So the outsourced mind is really, as I explained it, using people in the real world, the real expertise to help, build your economy forward. That's the intellectual side. That's the intelligence, IP, your intellectual property. That's the main thing in the world. It's all about IP. It's not about physical labor. Sorry, long explanation. I know.
No, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that and for breaking that down. I'm pretty sure that that will create a bit of awareness for a lot of people who are paying attention to this. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. Yeah. And I mean, this was fantastic. You shared a lot of gems. You dropped a lot of bars. Yeah. And I know that. I mean, for me, I was enlightened. I mean, there's a lot of things that I know I've been thinking about that you actually shed some light on as well. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being here, and to everybody who's watching. Thank you again for tuning in to another week of Dropping Bars. Don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you're consuming this content on. And I will see you next week for another episode of Dropping Bars. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Perry Douglas, for coming on Dropping Bars.
No problem. Take care. Goodbye.